Hi, everyone. I wanted to give a brief overview of a research article, what it looks like, how we attack these when we're assigned a reading, but also how we identify a research article. So I graded assignment one for everyone that submitted it by the deadline. And most of you did really well with the assignment. Some of you, though, had trouble finding a research article. So some of you found, those of you that didn't find a research article that related to your conversation um, reading, um, found something that was also a popular press article. So you might have linked to another conversation article. You might have linked to something that was describing research, again, very similar to a conversation article. So for that assignment, you needed to find your conversation article topic, and then within that reading, find a link to a research article, and then send me that link. I appreciate those of you that did the reading on raccoons. The reading from the conversation was fantastic. The articles that you identified were great to read. And I loved hearing about raccoons and how smart they were. So thank you, special note to those of you that did that. But for those of you that, again, kind of struggled with finding a research article, I want to show you what a research article looks like, give you some hints for, how you can tell if it's a research article or not. And then as I go through this article, I'm also going to give you some strategies for reading research-based articles. So let me know if this is helpful for you. I can keep doing these. When I would teach this class in person, I would often ask students, what is it that is confusing? Because that can start to snowball in any class, but I think in this class in particular. So let me know, email, comment in the video. Message through eCampus. Let me know if there are topics that you want me to cover in these brief videos. So this is a research article that I'm going to show you. I'm using two screens here, so if you see me looking over to the side, that's what I'm looking at. You'll see that in very large letters it says Journal of Family Psychology. That really is going to tip you off. Somewhere in your research article, you should see something that says Journal of the topic, or Family Psychology Journal, something that has journal in the title, or that sounds not just like a magazine, for lack of a better word. You're going to see a title like you would for anything else. This is just a cover page for this article. This is through WVU Libraries. But this is what a research article looks like. Now, the examples, there's 50 some of you in the class. There were a lot of different types of examples of how a research article looked, but they generally have the same kind of look. This is a copy of a PDF. Some of you found links to the online version, so it's going to look a little flashier than a PDF. But in general, research articles are going to start with an abstract. Sometimes it'll say abstract really big in the front part of the article. Otherwise, or other examples like this one, it doesn't say an abstract, but you see this text here that's kind of set off to the center, smaller text or smaller font size. This is the abstract here. The abstract gives you a brief overview of what the article is about. It's going to have a sentence or two of introduction. It's going to have a sentence or two about who is in the study, how many people, what did they do. It's going to talk a little bit about how did they collect the data. This multivariate analysis is a statistical method that we will not go over in this class, that you might get in grad school if you take that. And then it's going to give you some results. This is a positive main effect for father's perceptions, on and on. So it's going to give you the results of the study, and then a sentence or two about, okay, what does this all mean? So that's the abstract. If you aren't seeing that in what you're reading, then it's probably not a research article. So like when you read the conversation articles, they're going to start with, here's the key finding, or here's the key summary statement of what I want to talk about. And then it's going to be a lot of description. A research article doesn't start like that. It's going to start with an abstract. So that is a good clue. Another clue is there's going to be an introduction section to the article. There might be a section on theory or theoretical background. It's going to talk about the present study, but at the end of the present study, it's going to go over a research question or two or many or hypotheses. So if you are not seeing research questions or hypotheses in the thing that you're reading, not a research article. So go back and find another, start your search again. There's also going to be a method section. It might be method, it might be analysis, it might be that they're usually called method sections, but that's what you want to look for too in your search for a research article. This is where it's going to tell you who is in the study, what did the researcher have them do, what are the characteristics of the people in the study. You're going to see measures, you're going to see analysis, something to that effect that says, okay, this is what I'm asking people to answer. So these things that are in italics, they're all lists of questions. Okay, and then we're going to see results. That's going to be another clue. Now you're already, this is a short article, so you're on page 5 of this, but you can tell very quickly if you don't have a hypothesis or a research question, go back and search again. If you don't have that, plus you don't have a method section, plus you don't have a results section, go back and do your search again. So it's going to talk about all the different statistical stuff that they did and then finish up with the discussion. So that's how we're going to find research articles. Now, for that conversation assignment, you had to link within the conversation piece. And I'll tell you, there's one of you, and I made the comment in your feedback, there's one of you that picked a conversation article that didn't have any links to research articles. And that's unfortunate. That was sometimes that happens, and I'm kind of surprised because the conversation usually does a pretty good job with that. But if you have questions about that assignment, do let me know. If you're fine with this information, you can stop now. I'm going to take 3 minutes and I'll time myself 3 minutes to talk about how you can read a research article, the strategies that you use. It is different than reading a popular press, or I don't know why I'm saying that. It's different than reading a book. I like Sarah J. Maas. I read those very differently than I read research articles. They're more enjoyable to read. They keep my attention more. Research articles are more, I don't say more like work, but you need to set out in a different mindset to read a research article. So I'm going to take 3 minutes and talk about that here. So you are assigned a research article that, again, has this abstract, has research questions or hypotheses, has that method section, has the results, and then a discussion. And you go to read this. Now, this is in my research area. I like Jay Fagan a lot. He does great work, and it's about fathers. So I would read this through, and I would be interested in what the findings were. Some research articles are dry, and they are difficult to get through. So if you're really trying to push yourself to get through an article that is very difficult, that is not keeping your focus or attention, let me show you the key things that you need to get out of a research article. The introduction is a good place to kind of get a sense for what is the background of this topic area. If time is short, or if your attention span is not great, scroll down to where the hypotheses are. I'm going to look and see there's 4 hypotheses here. If I'm taking notes, it's a good idea to take notes, whether old-fashioned pen and paper or through your Word, I don't know, app, take notes on your computer. But I would write down what are the 4 hypotheses, and I would probably just copy it from this article because if I'm not writing a paper, if I'm just trying to get a sense for it. So I want to know what this study did. It's about fathers assuming responsibility with mothers gatekeeping, which is mothers trying to keep fathers away from their kids. So I would look, if time was short, I would look to see what are my 4 research questions or hypotheses. I'd write them down. I'm done with the introduction. I go on to the methods section. I want to know about the participants who were in the study or who was in this study. Okay, I'm going to see 14 different programs serving low income, mostly non-residential fathers, fathers that don't have the majority physical custody of their kids. 258. Perfect. I'm going to write that down. Oh, and now I see other non-program sites. Okay, high poverty neighborhoods, 390 fathers. Perfect. So I'm going to look through, write that down. I might skim through the rest. This is about the people who were administering the surveys. I'm not going to really pay much attention to that. Okay, I'm going to go down to where it says participants. Most were Black. And then, so I get my racial information of who is in the study. I knew from up above that they were being recruited from more poor areas. Most were never married. So I'm going to take notes on those things. Most had not completed high school. I'm going to write that down. 1/3 attended fatherhood programs. I'm going to make a note of that. And then I'm going to make a note of the age. Now, if I want to go deeper, depending on what I'm doing with this reading, measures are, like I said, the questions that, the sets of questions that were answered by the participants. We have a scale on father involvement. So I might write that down. What were the surveys that the participants answered? A measure on father involvement, on gatekeeping. So that's what they were asked to do. I might skip this other stuff, again, depending on what's going on. And then I might look at data analysis. If I don't yet understand, if I have not had a statistical methods class, if I haven't had a class that goes over what a t-test is or what a chi-square is, this is not going to make sense to me. So I might skip this. And so we're going to skip this. We're going to go to results. Results are going to be tough if you haven't had a stat class that is going to explain what these numbers mean. So guess what? If this is not making sense, we're going to skip it. Because so if you have had, I will say, if you have had a stats class, this is going to make more sense. Try to read this and get a sense for what this is saying. But I'm going to tell you why we can do our best with the results section, but some of this stuff is not going to make sense, especially if we don't have that statistical background. So I'm okay to skip this because I'm going to really pay close attention to the discussion. I want to know what were the findings. And so I'm going to read this section pretty closely. The first few paragraphs are going to talk about the findings. They're going to relate it back to other research that exists in this field. So we're seeing here that the present study is one of the few investigations of maternal gatekeeping and father involvement. This is important for me. I would write this down. This is like he's saying, one of the few studies that does this topic. Great. That's something special about this article that I'm reading about. And then I'm going to get some findings. Fathers who perceive that mothers engaged in higher levels of restricted gatekeeping, I'm over my 3 minutes, reported significantly less responsibility for children. So I don't need to know what multivariate analysis is, but I just need to know what this finding is. And so I can take notes through what they found in the article. And I can also look at the limitations. The limitations section is the researcher saying, I did my best with this study, but there are some things that I missed or some things that this study just didn't address. Every study has limitations, and so you can write some of those down as well. And then you might want to take a look at the conclusions. This is the researcher just kind of closing off and then finishing, talking more about the field in general. So reading a research article, like I said, it does take a different mindset, a different approach, taking notes throughout. You can write notes in the margins if you want or underline certain sections, but it's a different style of reading than reading a textbook or reading some of the readings in this class where they're chapters, where you would read from start to finish. In a research article, you're looking for those key bits of information to help digest the whole thing. 1 point extra credit opportunity. Find me and send me a research article, and when you send it to me, write a 1-page brief summary of what it is, what it's about. Okay, have a good day. I will talk to you guys later.